Welcome back, Lorcana players. It's Poisonous. Today we're looking at a Lemon Lime aggro deck. This deck is something that is starting to pick up. I'm seeing a lot more mirror matches when I've been playing it on Pixelborn, and I'm seeing it in tournaments now. It seems to be quite strong. It has the ability to go fast and get under some of the meta decks like red-blue and blue-steel, and has enough tools that it's strong into, more decks than aggro typically has been, especially with steel in the meta. You'd think that you wouldn't want to play aggro, but it seems to be holding its own, which is awesome. As always, thanks for checking out my channel. We're on a push to get to 500 subscribers. We're almost there. Really appreciate all the support from everyone. So if you could drop a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, that would be great. Your support matters a lot. So let's take a look at the deck list. We have 4 different 1-drops. So we're running Daisy, Clarabelle, Curse Merfolk, and Pegasus to give a variety of different options. You could also sub in some of the 0/4s like Nala or Little John. For 2-drops, we have a couple Lilo, we have the Piglets of course, and Go-Ghost for some spikes of lore gain. We're also running Ursula as a defense mechanism to remove some of those songs from steel decks. In the 3 slot, we're running Donald Duck as a bodyguard who gives lore. We're running the 3-cost uninkable Moana. She's got a 3/4 stat line that quests for 2, so she's aggro, but she's pretty beefy. We're running a couple Clarabelles here for card draw, and as another option to shift into big Clarabelle. We're running Kit for tempo, and we're also running Rapunzel to get card draw. We have the Shift Pegasus for 5 and the new Lady. We're not running the small one. Some decks I've seen do have the small Lady, but I found that there's times where you don't have the Tramp to enable her, and she's uninkable, so I opted to go with Curse Merfolk instead of Lady. But the Shift Lady is good. She returns 2 characters to your hand that cost 2 or less. So basically it's like draw 2 from your discard pile. Usually you'll have at least 2 good choices in there from your opening that have been removed by the time you can play her. We're running 4 copies of the new Tramp. This card is really good. It lets you filter through your deck. It's discounted by 1 for each character you have, and you draw as many cards as you have characters and discard that many. So you can look for, the best card for the situation you're in. We're also running Big Clarabelle as a way to refill your hand, and also a strong shift body. When you get to 5, if you have a little Clarabelle out, you can shift it and play from there. And we have 2 copies of Chernabog, because we have so many characters that end up in our discard. We can often play it for very cheap or free, and it's a huge body and a way to close out a game when you're trying to get the last bit of lore that you need to win the game. Now let's take a look at some of the combos that this deck uses. The first combo that I want to point out is with Rapunzel. She lets you heal 3 and draw 3. She's been a staple of every yellow deck forever. We do have a couple of high willpower characters with Daisy Duck and Moana, so if you have the Rapunzel in hand, sometimes it's worthwhile to challenge with these characters, put damage on them, and then heal to refill your hand, while especially with the Moana getting back some board control. Moana can trade out like a Belle, for example, or any other character that has 3 health or less, and then you can draw up to 3 cards off healing her, and she fits really well on curve, Moana on 3 into Rapunzel on 4. The Daisy also can be used to ping damage onto characters to finish them off and draw you cards with the Rapunzel heal, and that way you don't have to give your opponent a card off the Daisy triggered effect. We do have some other characters like Lady and Tramp that you might have out early that can also be healed, but I just wanted to point out the weaker characters on curve do work quite well as long as they have enough health. So really it's just Daisy and Moana. That's kind of one interaction where the Nala and Little John might be preferable because they're 4 health characters, but they don't have any strength, so unless you're running something to beef them up so that when they attack, then you're not getting any value out of those attacks other than the card draw. So the next card I want to talk about is the new Tramp. With his 2 abilities, he's discounted based on the characters you have on board. So sometimes if you're preparing to play it on like turn 4, you may not quest all your characters on the previous turn because you want to have as wide a board as possible to get the most cards and the biggest discount on Tramp. And then when you discard, you put a lot of bodies into your discard for the discount on Chernabog, and you can discard Lilos, which you could always bring back later as well. Now let's dive a bit into the opening ideas for this deck. So we have a lot of small characters. There's a lot of different ways you can play the opening. It's very rare that you don't have a good curve because of the amount of 1, 2, and 3 drops that we have. Going first, we want to be as aggro as possible. So Daisy Duck or Curse Merfolk are great because they both quest for 2. The Daisy survives whatever cards your opponent's going to play on their first turn. Curse Merfolk, chances are, will not last very long, but it does force your opponent into discarding, which sometimes they don't want to do. On turn 2, we like Piglet. The only thing to keep in mind with that is if you played a Curse Merfolk on 1, if it's going to die and you can't play 2 characters on turn 3, then you're not going to get any extra value out of your Piglet. So sometimes it's worth not questing the Curse Merfolk that you played on turn 1 if you need it to guarantee the trigger for Piglet on turn 3. If the Piglet's not getting the extra trigger for the 2 extra lore, it's really not worth playing it. You'd rather play a more aggressive 2-drop like Lilo or setting something else up. You want to go as fast as possible. So I like the Daisy on 1. Pegasus can also be good because it can't be challenged unless they have an evasive, but if they're steel and they can sing a song, then the Pegasus is going to die anyway. On 3, we have lots of different choices. Depends on what cards you have, of course, but I like the Donald Duck because it provides bodyguard, gives +1 questing. So if you went like Daisy, Piglet, Donald, you're going to be questing for 6 and you have a bodyguard. Kit can also be good if they have a character that's got enough strength that you can still bounce it. Moana is also good as another aggro card because she quests for 2 and can exert some board control. And the Clarabelle's also not bad going first, and playing on curve, you will get a card draw because your opponent has had more cards than you. And on 4, we have, different options depending on where you're at in your curve and the amount of cards in your hand, but it's nice to have a Rapunzel here that you can heal and draw cards, or you can play Tramp and, fill up your discard with characters, setting things up for the future. On the draw, we need to be a little bit more mindful of the defense. The Piglet, I find, is not as valuable in the opening for going second. Daisy is still good on 1, but more as a body to survive things and set up later plays. Pegasus, also not a bad choice because it is evasive, so you might be able to keep questing with it until they establish an evasive of their own. On 2, I like Ursula, especially against Steel, so you can try and remove a strength or a storm from their hand. And on 3, I really like setting up the Moana to try and fight back for some board while you get ready to start aggroing out. Or the Kit Cloud Kicker. If they've got some weaker characters, you can get some good tempo off of playing a Kit. Unlike other decks, aggro decks are very situational because you have a lot of options. You can play a lot of your hand on every turn. It's harder to prescribe, ideal opening lines because it really is dependent on the board state and what your opponent has. The main thing you want to consider is how much value each character can generate for you, and exerting them when it's optimal to do so and not exerting them or challenging when it's more optimal in the long term. To do that, the deck is aggro, but because of the tools that it has, there's still some mid-rangey stuff that you can do. So you just want to be mindful of that as you transition into like turn 5 and beyond. All right, let's jump into some gameplay. So in this game, we're going up against red-blue. So in our opener, we have not a lot of great cards here. We keep a Clarabelle and an Ursula, that way we are guaranteed to have a 1-drop, and we have an Ursula to play on 2. So we send 5 back. So we get some better options. Now we have Daisy, Lilo, Tramp, Rapunzel, Big Pegasus, and our original 2. So I'm going to ink the Tramp here. It's a little bit too early for him. Play out the Daisy. So our opponent inks, but they don't play anything. They don't have an item, which is good. So now we can go kind of full aggro, especially now that we've drawn into a Piglet here. So off the Daisy trigger, Popsicle goes to the bottom. They ink Tamatoa. They play Tipo, so they do have their ramp. We're going to ink the Lilo here, do 2 for Ursula, take a look, see if they have any songs. So they do have a pirate's life and lots of other removal stuff, so we're going to discard the pirate's life. And we're going to play out a Clarabelle, setting up for a possible shift if we draw into big Clarabelle here. And then we quest for 5. They get a Hiram off the Daisy trigger. They Sisu the Daisy. And they do 1 damage into Piglet with Tipo. Setting up for a potential trade with the Sisu here. But we do have Rapunzel in hand. So we're going to ink the kit. And play 4, heal 1 to draw 1 card. So the Chernabog in our hand here is a bit unfortunate. It's going to be a bit before we could potentially play that, but we are going quite fast on lore. So they brawl the Piglet, ink a Tipo, play the Sapphire Coil, and then they quest with their evasive. So we draw a Go-Go, not going to get any value for playing it, because they don't have anything with damage. So we just play out our Cursed Merfolk, and then quest for 4. Be nice to have, you know, a better character or more to do with our ink here, but we're still so far ahead. And then they go ahead and concede. So our deck is fast enough that if they don't have answers or they have any bit of clunkiness in their opening, we can quickly run away with it. So in this matchup, we're playing Purple Steel. We're on the draw. In our opening hand, we have Big Clarabelle, Donald, Rapunzel, Little Clarabelle, Cursed Merfolk, Moana, and Lilo. So we keep the hand, we don't mull any. This opening is okay. They start off by inking and playing a Magic Broom. We ink a Tramp, it's much too early for him, and play out Cursed Merfolk. They quest with Broom. And then they do Snake Bounce. So we draw Chernabog. I don't really like getting this card early in the game because it's just going to sit in our hand for a long time. So we ink Clarabelle. Play Lilo and quest with Cursed Merfolk. So our opponent inks a Broom, they challenge the Cursed Merfolk, forcing them to discard, and they discard Diablo. So they play Fox, pick up the Snake, and pass turn. We draw Pegasus, so we ink Clarabelle, we don't have the shift line, and we play out Moana. At least Moana's a threat that when it quests, the Fox would have to trade, or we have the option to take out the Fox if necessary, and we pass turn. Not going to let them pick off the Lilo for now, see if we can establish a board with a little more value. We do have a bodyguard in hand. So they have Fox sing Friends to fill their hand up. For 4, they play Goat. So now they have 2 big bodies out there. Moana can only deal with 1. So I ink Rapunzel, the reason being that since all their characters have more strength than our characters have health, there's no way I can really get some damage on it, one of ours, to draw cards. So I play out the Donald and the Pegasus, quest with the Moana. I think it's a bit of an error here to play Donald as a bodyguard. I'd be better off just playing him upright, that way he doesn't die to the Fox or Goat, because I assume he's going to take out both characters on this turn. So he does take both characters, so he bounces Goat back to hand with Snake. For 2, establishes a Calhoun. This card is pretty annoying against our aggro characters. We definitely need to prioritize removing it if we can. So we get a Cursed Merfolk. So we play out the Merfolk, and then we shift Pegasus. Shifting Pegasus gives all our characters evasive till the start of the next turn, so our Pegasus and Lilo can safely quest here. Our opponent plays Along Came Zeus, taking out the Pegasus, and quest with both characters. So we draw a pretty good card here. We draw the 3-drop Clarabelle, which lets us draw a card if our opponent has more. They have 3 cards in their hand at this point, and we only have 1, so we get to draw. We draw a Daisy, which is ideal because we have 1 ink left to play her out. And then we quest. I know that Calhoun's going to get value here, but we kind of need the bodies to be put into our discard so we can get the Chernabog out as soon as possible. So we're going to give up the lore in the short term and the characters in order to play the Chernabog here. So our opponent uses Calhoun to take out the Lilo. Snake takes out the Cursed Merfolk, forcing them to discard. They discard a Fox. Before they replay the Goat from earlier. And pass. So we draw into an Ursula. At this point we just want to get the Chernabog out on board. So we have 7 characters, we play Chernabog for 3. We quest for 3. The opponent gets a Benja. It's not really useful in our matchup because we don't have items. Now I gotta shuffle our characters into our deck. So Calhoun takes out Clarabelle. The Goat takes out Daisy. Snake quests. So the opponent plays Snake, bounces Calhoun. I think that they bounce the Calhoun here to remove the damage in case we top deck Go-Go. Otherwise, obviously, it would be more effective to bounce the Goat and gain the lore. They're just trying to prevent that win condition. And we top deck a different win condition, so we get Donald here, who gives +1 Questin to Chernabog, which is enough to go game. So we do pull out the win. It's a tough matchup. Purple Steel has lots of tools to deal with our deck, but we do have the ability to keep refilling with resources and just try and stay ahead as much as we can. So that's the deck. I think that it is quite good. There's lots of little things you could change, but I found this list to be performing quite well on Pixelborn. Thanks for tuning in, checking out the video. As always, I appreciate your support. Please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.